I can't help but I always design. Want me to use the mic? Okay, yeah. I always I do my initial work at site. I mean, that's for me very important. I can't sit somewhere else and design something in another place. So I normally visit a site, spend a few days there, try and understand exactly what the site is all about, whether it's sloping, where the trees are, where the views are. Then I do another thing is I look into the area quite seriously of what the area offers in terms of construction, in terms of climate, how people solve their problems, how the genius of a place. Every place has certain colors which I use, so it's very important for me. And then I start sketching, and I make an initial design. And if the project's not too big, I tend to mark it out on the site. For me, that's very important that a building fits snugly on a site. And I mark it out with chalk, and then I refine it, and I leave. Okay? If I can get the client there, I like to explain it to the client. So at least initially, we have some kind of understanding what I'm doing is right. Now, I will show, so I have this sort of odd way of working. I have a slightly whimsical way of working. I do a lot of projects where I'm very involved with the construction. So in those projects, you find a lot of strange things happening, but that's because of the process of construction, because I'm there a lot of the time. Now I'll explain this, my approach, in the form of 8 projects. Okay, they may be not the biggest projects or the best projects, but some are very small, but I think they'd be interesting. I'll start with a project from Bangalore, which I started about 25 years ago. And I came here to build a village for classical dance. I think a lot of people have seen it. I haven't seen it for many years. I'm going this afternoon to have a look at it again. And next one. I had a strange client. This is, her name was Protima Baby. She's the mother of Pooja Baby, who's better known at the moment. Okay, and she was an ideal client in many ways, in the sense that she was very supportive of her architect, and she had no money, which was really a plus point in many ways, because then I could dictate what was going to happen there, rather than what she would dictate. And we decided very simply to, next slide, we had a terrible site. The site was just sort of slightly undulating site with small mango trees which had been neglected. A horrible site. And she was gushing and said, what a wonderful site, I believe it's the best, and this kind of thing. So I was like, quite surprised. And next one. And the site was 100 meters by 400 meters. This was the site. And across the road later we built a little hotel, okay, which is called Kutira. But this was the dance village. And it's a very strange sort of approach. She wanted to build a village for to teach classical Indian dance in the form of gurukuls. That means there'd be 6 students who would be with one guru. They'd stay together and they'd look after the guru, and the guru would sort of teach them how to dance. And they'd be like together 24 hours. And there were going to be 7 of these gurukuls for different art forms. And she was going to get the best guru in each art form and come, who would stay there with the 7 students or 6 students. And a very idealistic kind of thing. And this is 1988. 1988 is the time which, how many were born before 1988 here? Oh, everyone's, okay. You were born before 1988. You mean the rest are younger than that? Anyway. So, yeah, I suppose. And it was a time when, like cable television was just coming in. And before that, like you had only Doordarshan. It was like a strange time. And it was a strange project, somebody asking you to do that at that point of time. Next. So next. Yeah, so we had no money, and we were going to be building with local materials and local labor. And the whole project was supposed to generate a lot of interest and get money, and we were going to build this great village. So this is how you locally built. This is Hesarghatta. It's about 35 kilometers from Bangalore. I don't know how many kilometers from here. And this is what you built. You built in stone with mud, with a clay. And then at plinth level, you put this chappudi across, which will handle, kind of get the loads stabilized. Didn't move in any direction. Next. And I came here with a motorcycle from Goa and had a tent to live in. And I lived here a year on this site. Not always in the tent, only for the first few weeks in the tent, after that in a camper. And I was looking to see how people actually did work in Bangalore, in this area. And I found this wonderful stone columns and slabs and beams, which cost nothing. And it interested me a lot. I mean, each of these used to cost about 200 rupees. Now, I don't think it costs that much more, because it's not based on technology or power or anything like that. Next one. And they had this very interesting way of, they took the slabs and lifted it onto this framework that you made, and they'd lift like 1,000 feet in one day, and they do it with a chain block. This is like local labor from the village who would do it. The stone came from about 10 kilometers away, the big slabs. The small things came from within a kilometer or two. Next one. Now the problem, everything has, there's solutions, something offers a solution, but there are also problems. The problems is, it offers a very boring building. It is a building which was like, columns at 2.5 meters spacings and then a slab. So a very uninteresting block. Next. So I decided to add Nubian domes. So this Nubian dome, I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's a way of building a dome with mud, with just an arm. You keep on putting course by course. So I said, let's introduce the Nubian dome to increase the interesting vocabulary, to make the vocabulary of architecture more interesting. And the Nubian dome gave larger spaces, like for the living rooms or the bedroom was this, for the smaller spans, where the slabs where you could put kitchens and toilets next. And the architectural plans then became completely different. You weren't like an architect sketching, this is how the building would be, but it became a pattern of construction. Now this was a house. This was the manager's house of in one of the areas. And the domes were large span. They became a living room or a bedroom. And under the slabs came the kitchen, toilets, laundry, whatever. Next. And you were working as a construction system, and this is a whole Gurukul, where the left side is the Guru's house, then there was an entrance, this is the dance hall, and the right side was where the kids lived, and there was some guest room. So everything became a pattern. Next. And this is what the building looked like after it was ready. Next. Okay, now, I was one whole year on that side doing nothing else but building this place. I had lots of time. So I was like just sketching out. I only used a scale and a pencil. I didn't have a T-square, set square kind of thing. So, and this is the kind of drawing details I was working out. Like this was a set of steps going up. Next. And this was another drawing. So what one was doing actually in this building was you were making basic plans. You start your foundation work and then you draw out each wall as it goes along and sort of refine it, and so you're working in a lot of detail of the kind of stone which gets into each place. Next. Okay, but you could create something quite dramatic using very simple things. So this is part of the hotel which was ready. Okay, now it's called Kutiram. It's run by the Taj, and unfortunately the Taj is built in mud and there's no cement in the building, so it's not their kind of building. They don't know how to handle it. Next. And it's amazing. You could do a lot of interesting things with very simple material. So I had the dome and I had the flat roof, and that's what I created. Next. Okay, and the buildings look like nothing on earth. And nothing was happening at that point of time. Everybody was, this is 1988, people were like becoming very modern and using imagery which came from the West, and cable TV was coming in. And these were like these oddball buildings which came from a construction method. Next. And very whimsical because I had a lot of time. So I was fooling around, every wall. Next. And this was another set. This is actually the suites. There are 3 suites in it, but again it was a cobweb which came out of a construction principle. Next. And that's inside the suite. Okay. Next. Okay, this is the entrance to the dance village. It's got a entrance which is like a torana, like Sanchi, but I had no money, so I was using it in its roughest form, and I find a broken stone, it was like exciting because it's better than a straight stone. Things like that, you know. So I just place things, you know. Next. Okay, this is the yoga center. Next. This is, you know, the first modern roof that we use because the bamboo and thatch was giving trouble, so it was leaking every year. So this was the modern roof. It doesn't suit the place at all. Next. There were a lot of courtyards in the place and everything very whimsical. Next. This is the bar in the hotel. It's got columns, and but it's like it's radially going out. You could do a lot of interesting things in you know, once you're forced to do, once you've got a structural system which is already there established, then you divert from it a little bit. Sometimes as an architect, you can do anything you want. The minute you do anything, you want to do anything you want, you tend to go crazy. You know, you don't do things which suit the overall language. Next. Okay, this is one of the rooms which I'm going to stay tonight. Okay, next. This is another room. The domes are wonderful places to be in, and it takes 2 days to build one of these domes. It's sort of magical system of building. Only the problem is it's difficult to waterproof the dome. Next. Okay, now I'll take you to a completely different world. You know, like here I'm building in such a in a very personal, passionate way. Suddenly I got a town, you know, like out of the blue. 1995, and I was given this requirement that I have to do a town with 2,000 houses and a school and a hospital and guest house and airport, this and that. You know, like, very scary sort of project. And I was this guy who was just doing this little detail, so I had to work out a way. And next, I had a site which was about 330 kilometers from Bangalore and about 330 from Goa. It's near Hampi, hot, arid area, rains 13 inches, and not a tree on the site, very boring site. And I went and visited lots of company towns, like the one I was going to build, and I realized that it was one of the most neglected design projects. People, there's somebody who came there and he took a pencil and said school, and he did hospital, and he put housing, and nobody conceived of the town as a project where you walked along the road and saw something interesting. At the end of the street there was something else. There was nothing which was spatially interesting. So I had this problem. Next. This was the local architecture. Local architecture was so hot that people had no windows, and they put stone roofs, and on the roof you put a foot of mud to protect yourself, and you didn't allow any breeze into the place. And by the time it was evening, it became very hot, and then you went out of the house. That's how locals handled it. Next. So I'm an optimist. I always say, wow, let me do an exciting town. So these are 10 things I wrote 20 years ago. And basically, I wanted to make a town which was interesting, unique in terms of identity, that houses were not a number, you know, that you only knew your house by looking at the number. I wanted to make interest, and it had to be modern and able to grow. It had to be safe for children. It had to be prefabricated because I had to build this thing very soon. And the management wanted me to standardize, because if I didn't standardize, I'd get kicked out. You know, as simple as that. They wanted, they didn't want, suppose they were junior managers. They wanted all junior managers to have 7 windows and 2 doors in the house. And if somebody got an 8th window, then they'd be fighting about how he wants the house with 8 windows, kind of thing. So I had to standardize. Next. And so, you know, it was a time when I said, I must build a town which is, you know, which is like the towns you have in the Middle East, because it's a hot area with courtyards and, you know, shady streets, courtyards which had a north-south orientation, the sun hardly got in. I had all these dreams, but once I got down to actually doing it, it became very difficult, and it had to become a more modern plan. Next. This was my first picture, my first sketch, which was there. There was a highway, and you got in through the highway across the railway line, and you got into clusters, and you couldn't get out of the cluster. Each one was a kind of oasis. And there was a spine running through the center, which had the public buildings. Next. And so, how was I going to create variety? That was my biggest problem. So, I did this little diagram, this is 20 years ago, to show the clients, where I took 4 forms, which actually amounts to 4 types of houses, and I joined them together in different ways. So, I was designing a block which could join to each other. It could also go up and down because of the slope of the land. I didn't want to grade the land at one level. And I created a number of forms using just those 4 forms. Okay, something which I call matrix of variety. Next. And this is the final master plan which came out. There was the highway there, and the road came in. On the left was all the public buildings, and on the right was a green belt. I had one little hillock on the side, which was there, which is actually down here. And I had a lot of contours where I could make a lake. But the lake wasn't a lake which filled up with the water which came in from, there was hardly any rain, but we filled it up and it remained. It's just a dam. You just constructed a dam here, and then you got a lake which was about 2 or 3 acres wide, and we put all our raw water into it. That is a memorial. I'll talk about it later. And I generally tried to have a standardized kind of housing which followed the contours in some ways. Next. Oh, sorry, we went completely wrong. Okay, so let's go into the town. Now the town, this is a 15-year-old picture. Now it's like, you can't see any buildings. It's full of trees. It's a problem for us in many ways. It's raining much more than it used to rain. So, but lots of advantages. And this is what it looked like from above. That's the lake you could see down there. Next one. And these are all units which... okay, I was given a very small requirement. I was said, most of the people had to live in a 1-bedroom house of 50 square meters, which was quite inadequate because most of them had young kids. Those people had 2 kids. And so I said, okay, everybody in this area needs either a garden or a terrace. So houses are like stepped where you can step onto the terrace. It's like you sleep in Delhi out in the open. So in the evening, everybody slept out on their terrace. Yeah, next. So this was the basic cluster where there were 16 houses around a courtyard. The traffic was on the exterior, and all the kitchens faced this garden, So the housewife could see the kid playing, and then the kid would go to the main park which was there without crossing any traffic. And each of these were different blocks which could join in different ways. Next. Okay, so this is one corner of it. That's the corner block. I used local stone. I used prefabricated roofs. Next. Okay, you can see the prefabricated roof. I used concrete joists, and I put a kadapa stone, and on top of that I put my slab. And next. Okay, this is the corner somewhere where you can see the house exactly. That guy steps over this part, and he sleeps out, or he lived mostly there. Next. This was the inside of a house. So the house was actually secondary to the overall space, the town. The town was most important. The house was secondary. So sort of next. And inside each of these clusters were gardens which I had to design with the people who lived there. Like they said, one guy wanted only neem. Each one you wanted to make some kind of difference to the place. Next. Okay, this was another cluster garden. Next. Okay, now this was then, you had the other series of clusters, gardens, which were the main gardens, the township places, where every evening people would come and play cricket and stuff like that. So you had stuff like that. You see these are three-storied buildings where each one has a terrace to the next level. Next. Okay, so that's another cluster, large cluster. Next. Then one had, you know, on main ends, buildings which were placed so that when you go down the road you saw something interesting. So this was a clock tower, which was also a little cricket stadium pavilion. Next. And that's the view from there. Next. This was the main gateway, which was of the township. It's called Vidyanagar. It has about 10,000 people living there. Next. So there were many of these gateways. Like this is the temple gateway, which is again an access from a road. Next. Yeah. So the architecture became secondary to the overall city planning, and one was trying to get people to walk through these buildings. So this is the market complex, and everybody who had to go to the market, he would walk through the market. If he had to go to the club across, he'd go through the market. So I had this whole alternative way of people moving in the township. You know, so the buildings were less important than the circulation. Next. Okay, so this is the entrance to they had 4 gateways to get into the market. Next. And this was one of the lounge and reception or the guest house. Next. Okay, that's the west view. So it's got all creepers growing on this now. Next. That was the club. The club was a building which was in the center of the whole thing, and again you had a whole pedestrian network which went into the club. Next. This was the main courtyard of the club. Next. Same one. Next. This was the owner's house. Actually, it's a very strange story. I had designed a kind of palace for somebody in '86. And these people came, it's on a cliff overlooking the sea in Goa. And these people came to me and said, the people who I built the town for, they said, I want you to build a house like this in my new plant, which is coming up. So I went there and said, and what's the size of the house? Oh, it's twice the size of the house that you've already done. You know, so it's kind of a strange request. Somebody wants a 40,000 square foot house. Anyway, I went to see the site, and then I asked them, what else is coming up here? They said, oh, there's housing coming up, and there's a town coming up. But you don't do that. So I said, no, I do that also. So they said, you sure? So I did this whole town, and 15 years later, at the end of the project, the house came up. Okay? It's a very strange kind of thing. And the house wasn't 80,000 square feet or 40,000 square feet. And anyway, so this is the house, the house, one of my last ones. Next. And it's got this swimming pool that you can just dive off from the veranda and get into the water. I don't know if they dive off, but okay, next. And this is there's an airport terminal, just part of it, which was under construction at that time, but I don't think much more has happened in it. Next. Yeah, at some point, the chairman died. And the chairman died, and the managing director, my boss, said, you have to build a memorial for the guy. And he said, in the green belt. Green belt, you can't build anything. But I couldn't tell the boss that I can't build a memorial for his father in the green belt, you know, the building. So what I said is, let's make it a very green place. Let's do it that we have the grass growing over the building. You know, that you can't really see this memorial. So he said, okay. And I have another problem. My client always, they fly in by plane. It's a remote place. So they always look at things from the air. You know? So they suddenly come and tell you, that road is not aligned with this road. You know? It's like our architects. We always look at plans. We think the plan is the main thing. I mean, nobody realize that when you're in the building, that's the main thing. So anyway, they used to go. So I said, come on, let's do this thing. We'll make this memorial like a big kind of spiral, you know. So in the middle of the green belt was this building, which was no building, and then it had the spiral which went all over the place. So when they were on the plane, they could see a good plan. Yeah. Next. Okay. And this was a long time ago. Now I hope you can't see the building. So there are 4 entrances to the place. Can we just go back? Okay, so the idea was to build this building which had 4 entrances. You enter here and you don't know what's going to happen. You're sort of walking down a corridor and you have no idea what you're going to hit. And then you come here and you finally come to the main space. And there was no windows in this place, just one aisle, which was about 1.2 meters on, which was open. So all the breeze was supposed to just go into it, and there was grass on top. And on this side was an exhibition running on the man who died. Next. Okay, next. Okay, so you're now entering that place. It's just built out of sort of brick and waste stone. See, I'm very good. I used to like using domes and walls, and it's like natural principles of building. So you enter through this thing, and then you didn't know what was happening. It was like you entered into a space of great atmosphere, and you walk around. Next, and then you come to close to the end into the main dome. Next, and that's your main dome. Okay, so it's a spectacular structure, all built with natural systems of building, and very little light, very little light, and very often a shaft of light shooting, like this on the floor, and it was moving around all the time. And every morning people came, did yoga there, and they do chanting, and it was reverberating along. Next. Okay, now I'll take you through a very small project. It's just an approach. I want to show you an approach which I often take. Sometimes you have a site which has no potential. It's got an ugly building here and an ugly building here. And what do? You block yourself off. Or you go internally. And sometimes you have a very strong site. And this is a very strong site, and it meant a particular kind of approach. Next. Okay, I have a big river here in Kerala. Not bigger, it's a lake, Vembanad Lake. And I have a site of about 10 acres. And it's strange land. It's canals, which are about 6 meters wide or 8 meters wide, and 6 meters wide and 8 meters of land. Then 6 meters of canal, 8 meters of land. It's just going. And on the land was coconut trees or rubber trees. Next. Okay, so that's my land. That's the lake. And so I said, I cut a few more canals across. So they became islands. And I put one cabana on each island. And I also sometimes had my cabana as a bridge between 2 pieces of land. Next. Okay, this is the lake, and my canals are going that way. There's one canal in this direction. I had to build something which was very light. I had marshy soil, so it had to be very light. It had to be prefab. It all had to come in by canoe, largely. Next. Okay, so this is a kind of construction which I thought of on a very engineered structure. Steel columns, then wood. Next. So this is it under construction. Okay, next. Okay, that's the cabana, which is over between the 2 pieces of land. Next one. This is the cabana getting ready. See, you had to be a little above the ground to get a good view. So this is like you had to go up 2.5 meters. So this is the cabana under construction. Next. And this is kind of ready. So sort of the whole thing disappears. So the site meant you had something which you could see through. It was very light and different. Next. Okay, so this is the cabana which is between the 2 pieces of land. Next. Okay, that's the inside of the cabana. You had a wooden structure. Inside was bison board, and the interior was with white cedar and rosewood. Next. Okay, they had a deck, and this is a view from the deck of the furniture. Next. This is the view from the room overlooking the deck. It's very pleasant to sit down there on that deck. Next. Okay, I do a lot of waste I use for bathrooms. Next. Okay, I'll take you to one of my favorite little projects, which I'm sure a lot of you all have seen. How many have been here? Oh, just a few. Okay, that's even better. Okay, now it's a little, come next. This is a museum which I run. It's called the Houses of Goa, Museum Houses of Goa. And this is where I live. Okay, and I have this great walk to my office, which is about 2 minutes, which is there. Okay. And my wife is a teacher. She runs a school called Misha's Play School. And I had a problem. This was the public road, and there was another public road here which ended here. So traffic was a big problem for the school. So I bought this triangular piece of land, and I decided to build a small museum, which was a traffic aisle. You know, it's also the middle of my kingdom. You know? And next, okay. Now I had a terrible site. It was like this triangle, but I had to have the traffic going around. So finally, the plan was sort of isosceles triangle, very sharp, terrible for a traffic island. So what I did is I cut off the corners, you know, and after the first row, I let them corbel out. And I put the staircase in the only place the staircase could fit, which is in the middle. And I cantilevered two parts outside on two sides. Next. And this is the lowest level. You enter the reception, and then you have a loo. And on the other side, you have a cafe. And the person at the reception, one person handles the whole museum. They have a camera, so they know what's going on at all the levels. And if somebody comes and says, I want a cup of tea, they nick over there and make the tea, and they come back again. Okay, next. Okay, that's the first level. It's been cut off. It's a big gallery. You can see in section where it is. Next. Then it's corbelling out. By the second level, it's a full triangle again. Okay. There are no openings anywhere because you have to have a lot of display space. But the openings are at the ends, which I can't display stuff. Next. And this is my little theatre on top, which was made for students of architecture. It's 10 years old, the museum. In those days, students of architecture were 35 or 30 in a batch, not like you all. So that was this little theatre, which was like an attic. Next. Okay, so this is the section. The land is sloping down. Slopes down by 1.2 meters. And you've got the 1, 2, 3 levels, and the attic is there. I had to make it interesting, so I cut off the slab at the corners here, and I put in 2 seats where you can listen to music, you know, at the ends, and you're actually sitting over the space, you know, so it's like a little scary to go and sit down there. Next. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You know, as you're coming down the road, you have this, if you haven't been on that road, and you see that, then you're likely to have an accident. It's like strange building which is there. Okay, that's the view from down the road. Next. Okay, this is from the view from the side where it looks like a boat or something. It looks like a boat, looks like a fish, it looks like strange things. It can look like. So there are little waves I put there for fun because everybody said it looked like a boat. That's my theatre on top hanging out. Next. That's the view from the other side of the theatre, okay, which is the south side. You can see the slope of the land. Next. That's the view from the north side, okay, where the theatre hangs out there. No windows in this building. It's a very cheap building. Only the toilet has a door. And next. That's the view from the east side. Okay. Next. That's in the night. Next. Night also. Next one. Okay, that's the entrance to the place. You enter at this place. There's a strange granite sort of column, which actually came from Bangalore. I bought 10 here and I took 3 back. Next. That's the inside of it. It's a very interesting museum in the sense that it explains the Indo-Portuguese house. You know, we have a very interesting history Goa has. You know, Goa was conquered by the Portuguese. They brought a design. We had our design. We mixed the two, and it's the story of this. Next. Okay, so it's got a lot of stuff to see. Next. This is the next level. The next level has got the artifacts and doors and windows and columns. Next. Okay, that's the seat. You can see the seat where you hang over. Okay, the top. And you sit down, and it's very strange. You know, like everybody's damn serious museum, and then you come in and then you sit on the seat and then you listen to Konkani and Portuguese music, and everybody starts like going like this. And because they have the headphones, they start speaking very loudly, so it's like interesting. Yeah, next. And this is the top level where students of architecture used to sit before, but now it's too small. Next. Okay, that's where the slide projector used to be placed 10 years ago. Yeah, next. Okay, now I just take you through a project which I just finished 2 months ago. Okay, it's a strange story. When you work in life, one thing leads to the other thing leads to the other thing. So, you saw the underground memorial which I showed you in the township. So there was an industrialist who came to the township and he saw this thing, was very impressed, and he went, and in a week his father died. So he came to me and said, I want a memorial too. It has to be underground. And it was next. Yeah. It had to be in Anjar. Anjar is in Gujarat, which is the epicenter of the earthquake which hit. And where everybody died, or the whole school. So I was building in this earthquake area, and they didn't know what I was supposed to build, except that it had to be a memorial, it had to be underground. Okay, so I designed. So the strange thing about it is, this area of Kutch has nothing left because the earthquake destroyed everything. And what is built now are the most ugly houses built in concrete blocks and AC cement roofs, and very ugly. There's nothing to go by, and for me it's very important to have something to go by. So there's a Harappan town called Dholavira, which is about 150 kilometers from there. It's got these stone walls, So I said, okay, let's put this thing underground, and on top build a memorial which is like a garden in memory of this man, and underneath put a theatre, which is useful for the factory. It's a big factory, so it's useful for their work, and there were exhibition halls. So I designed this kind of thing where most of it is underneath, and there are 4 cardinal directions where there are steps going up, and you go up and you go up and you go up. By the time you reach up, you're about 17 meters high, where you could look at the surrounding land. Or you enter into at 4 places you can enter into the theatre, exhibition hall, then you go down, down, down. So both the bottom and the top are completely divorced from each other, they're completely different structures. Next. So inside this whole thing is this modern theatre, seats about 600 people, plus exhibition halls and meeting rooms. Next. Okay, so you can see the section, how much is below the ground, and that's the, next. And this is how, these are all early sketches where it was conceived. Yeah, next one. Okay, so let's start construction now. So we dig underneath and we're starting to build. That's the stage there. Next. And that's the roof which is coming up. Okay, the final roof, which is in steel. Next. And the building is coming out of the ground. Next. Okay, then the stonework starts coming, this Dholavira kind of thing. Next. And that's it ready. It just opened a couple of months ago. The trees, the big trees on the top which have to grow still. And it's so this is one of the entranceways. Yeah, next. That's another one. I can't see things clearly at all from here. Are they clear from there?
Yes.
Yeah, from here, it's just too close. Yeah, next. Okay, that's the theatre, the inside of the theatre. Next. That's the stage. The company is called Wellspun. Next. That's an exhibition of the company. So you don't have to go for a performance. You also, have, all the visitors are brought there, and they go see what the company does, and they get impressed with the theatre, and they sit there. Also, next. Okay, and that's a picture of the opening ceremony, where they're all, sitting on top, and all the audience is down there. It's a very big structure. Next. Okay, now I'll take you to something which is even more recent. It's a club which I did, and it's built in something called the CRZ zone. Now, CRZ zone it's close to the sea. You're not allowed to build any permanent, And I was given this site next. Okay, it was a site which was about 60 meters by 18 meters. Starts at 18 meters high. That means it's like a 5-story building, and it's just sloping up right up to the sea. And I'm not supposed to use any cement. Okay, so next. Okay, so this is how it was conceived. That's the top. You enter from the top. There's one wooden structure which has got the kitchen. On top of the kitchen is the fine dining place with a tent on top. Something like this, but better. Okay, and down, and it's all terrace going down, and there was an old quarry there, and in the quarry, one sort of enclosed it for the dance floor. Okay, and one put a bar right at the edge, a thatch bar. Next. Okay, and now the whole thing had to be, a series of retaining walls had to be built, thick walls, and it's to get the material down is, these kind of projects are kind of semi-legal. You have to start building in the monsoons, and you have to finish by the season. By the time, by December, November, you have to build, and so we built with sandbags. The whole construction is done with sand and earth from the site itself, but the retaining walls had to be very thick because it had to withstand a lot of pressure. So we used the sandbags with local stone, which is on the site, and little stone we got it, which are intertwined together. But finally, when it's ready, you don't see the sandbags. Okay, next. And we built, the walls itself had to be the architecture, and we built walls, arches, and all dry. Everything was dry, not a bit of cement in it. We used the same sandbags for formwork. Next. Okay, and that's one of the walls built on the rock of the quarry. This is the wall which faces the sea. Yeah, next. And it's this kind of site is a very sensitive site. You do a lot of things on the site. Building the steps and getting the angles right. The way you have to be very. You can't sit in the office and do something like that. So this is a wall being built, and niches are there in the wall. Next. And like these are steps getting built. No cement at all, building it. Next. Yeah, that's the building. So ready from the sea. Okay, it's got this bedrock, and the dance floor is 3 sides it's got built up, and the last side I put sandbags and covered it, and you keep on going. That's the bar there. Next. This is a party's about to begin. In a little while there'll be 500 people on the dance floor. That's the DJ is there, and it's an interesting place because it's something like this. You can be, you don't have to be dancing. You can be up there looking, and you can be up higher looking at those people looking at the dance floor. Things like that. Yeah? Next, and the floor is just earth with sand sprinkled on it. It had to be a very low intensity project. Walls are with thatch. Bamboo. Everywhere, the retaining wall we took a little higher, which became a seat throughout the project. Next. That's a fabric roof on the thing. The thing is huge. It's a tension structure, so it's just pulled, and it doesn't have things holding it, and it's pinched and taken up again. Next. And that's what it is. It takes nothing. It's agricultural material. You have this very fancy white material which costs the earth. That's too expensive for us. So, next. That's another view of the place. Yeah, next. Okay. Now, I take you to an even smaller project. Okay, it's just a wall for an amphitheater. Okay, this is a project which is a very interesting project, but it's too complex to show, to understand in a slideshow. But next. That's the building. It's exactly opposite the museum. It's a amphitheater which had to be built, which was ready, but we had to put a protective wall around. And it's all built, the wall had to be built on a cantilever of 2 meters. So it had to be very light. Now, to get something very light, one of the ideal materials is bottles. And you have lots of bottles in door, thrown all over the place. From guys from Bangalore who came in. Yeah. Next. Okay, so, but the thing is, to build with bottles, obviously you have to make a system of construction, a bonding, like you have English bond, Flemish bond, so we had to get a bond going. And next one, yeah. See, it's perfectly all right. The circular bottle is perfectly all right because you have no vertical joints. But what do you do with the corners? The corners is the big problem because they have to, be right angle, and they've got and the Royal Stag whiskey is ideal. So that's the Royal Stag whiskey which is used for the corners and for the buttresses. Now, it's interesting You see, when we work as an architect, I try and make an interesting project. To make an interesting project, you often have to have interesting client, or you take your client along. So we built this wall, 10-meter stretch of wall, and we called all the kids. The kids are studying there, and we called them groups of groups from 4 years onwards. They're 4 to 10 we brought, not the 2.5-year-olds, because they couldn't understand. We brought them and said, okay, how do you like this wall of your new theatre? They said, I love the wall. Strong, they said strong. So I said, now we need another 25,000. Will you get it for us? So one guy said, tomorrow? I said, no, not tomorrow, but we need the bottles. And for the next 3 or 4 months, every day the kids would arrive in school, and on the steps they'd dump bottles. And we said we build with any bottle, whether it's tomato ketchup or it's a medicine bottle, you bring any kind of bottle. And over the next few months, we finished the project. Yeah, next. And we put a coping on it. They're 10-meter stretches, expansion joints so that they don't crack. Every 5 meters a buttress so that we could hold it on. But this is like Tuborg beer, which was a lot you could get, but you can't get only Tuborg. People are getting anything. Next. So that's the theatre, but you can see the bottles all around. Next. Okay, that's the stage a few months ago. And one thing you've got bottles, you've got different colored bottles, so you can make faces and the walls and things like that. So there are 4 faces at the back of the stage. One is a monkey with a cigarette, and different faces. Yeah, next. And then we put a bamboo space frame on it. We treated the bamboo and we took it to the lab and checked the joint. That is the thing. Yeah, next. And you can see at some point in time the bottles were getting all sorts of bottles. So we had to make different patterns, and we couldn't have the same bottles going. Next. And this is the inauguration of the theatre maybe 3 weeks ago. And everybody sitting on the stage. And next. And then we had a jazz performance that evening. It's a very lovely set. Okay, that's now I come to the last project next. Yeah, it's a restoration project which took many years to happen because of a lot of local problems. Everybody thought I was destroying the project, not saving the project. So I had a police case against me and all sorts of kind of confusing things were happening on the project. Next. Okay, it's the earliest fort of Goa. It's built in 1490. It used to be an Adil Shah fort, then the Portuguese conquered it and became a Portuguese fort. And this is a picture in 1862 or 1871 or something like that. Okay? And it's a lovely fort. It's on a big rock overlooking the river. And it had a lot of wonderful buildings. Next. But unfortunately, by the time in 120 years or 150 years, it became a jail, then it became a hospital, and all the building roofs had flown off, and everybody had kept on adding things to it. And I inherited a fort which was strong, with good walls, but all the buildings had become junk. There was nothing historical about the buildings. And there was very little of what to go by to recreate. So I'm just showing you one little part of the project, and I had to remove all these things in yellow to come back to the original plan. Next. And I had to come back to this. That was what we decided that was all rubbish, and we had to come back to the earlier one and rebuild the earlier one. Next. Okay, just go back one slide. And I'll just show you what I did with this building. Okay, it was, next. This was the building at the back. It's a 400-year-old building, but you can't make it out. And there was a building which came in front, building which came on the side, all rubbish, recently come. Kitchens, toilets, next. So I start removing the thing, then next. I remove it, and this is my building. Now, restoration is a sort of strange thing. Everybody expects you to just paint the building or just do this, but I couldn't do this. I mean, what would, as an architect, I'd be failing to have restored this building. Next. Okay, now, there was another building built, it's called the Bishop's Palace, at the same time where this building was built. Okay, 1600 or something like that. And this is what the buildings looked like. It had this huge, steep roof. It had a double story where the lower part was stables or something like that. And you had this wonderful staircase going up. Next. That's the detail of the staircase. Next. Okay. You had a wonderful truss which worked in it, very steep, and at a third from the top you had a member going across. At the roof level you had another member which held the building in position. Next. Okay, so this is, let me show you the restoration process. It had a huge plinth, so I cut the plinth completely. Next. Brought it down. See, my job as an architect was to make it into a cultural center where I had to put toilets, I had to put plant room and electricity. I had to make it comfortable for people to live in. So I had to find spaces to build. I brought it down to the lowest level. Next. I restart building. Next. Build my toilet, plant room, everything, but I didn't want to show it. Next. Okay, that's high plinth again. Next. Walls getting built, all built in mud and lime because you use the same method of construction. Next. Okay, that's the building under construction. I put in this little staircase which nobody knew where it was. Next. Okay, and I start putting my roof. Next. And I put in a sheeting which is perfect for the country tile because I didn't want the building to leak. This is very important that there's no leakage. Tiles don't fly off. Next. Okay, that's the building getting ready. Next. Yeah. Next. Okay, that's my building complete. Okay, this was like interesting. I mean, like, it looks like an ancient building. Again, but it wasn't there. You know, this kind of building. And I made the mistake of putting a little, planning a little lift for handicapped people. And that, the minute, I live in a small place, so when they saw that there was a lift coming, they thought I was building a 7-story building. You know, so, and I quickly stopped the lift. There's no lifting. No, until we get wise enough to understand. Okay, so next one. Okay, and I'll just show you, I'll end with just a few pictures of the fort, of, you know, it's like one has to be painting the landscape and, you know, getting an air of what was ancient into what you built. Next. Okay, that's in the night what it looks like. When you come to go, you have to visit. It's called Rage Margos Fort. Next. Next. Okay, that's some of the rooms which have become exhibition spaces. Next. And that's the last picture. Yeah. So, so essentially, I sort of explained, I've shown you different projects and explained you an approach to building, what I do. I do all sorts of projects, not only what you see. Sometimes I have to do projects which I have to give working drawings and I can't change the thing, which is unfortunate. But, so I do those projects. But whatever I do, I try and get into it quite seriously. And for me, it's most important of the feeling as you're walking through the building rather than what the building looks like. You know, and that I think is the most important thing. And yeah, so end at this point, and please ask me any questions. Okay, or if you don't want to ask me, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I request you to accept this token of appreciation for your time. Are you sure nobody has any questions?
You can ask me afterwards. I have this whole, I do a lot of workshops in my museum, and so I have groups of students coming, and then we all get together, and then nobody asks any questions, and then I start showing them around, and everybody asks questions, and then at the end again we meet after 2 hours. At the end of it, again nobody asks questions. You know, the kind of thing. until last week where I was doing a group of 5 to 8 year olds in the museum. And I always say, you know, like, you can ask a question in between. And every time I was saying something, like 5 hands would go up. So I'd say, I was doing a lecture on houses and homes through the ages, you know, like, so I'd show a house which was like a house from Italy, and one guy said, I was in Italy, you know, and they went on like this until the point when it was like impossible, so I had to tell them, shut up now, let me finish my lecture, let me go ahead. So, but, I mean, I'd be very happy to answer something. Okay, we move ahead. Thank you.